Producer Mike caught me watching mukbang on YouTube again. He walked in and said, "What the muck?" Last month, which was February 2026, I read 6 books. 2 by T. Kingfisher, 1 by Rachel Harrison, 1 by Richard Osman, 1 by Kylie Lee Baker, and 1 by Frank Herbert. I ended up rating all of them between 2 and 4 stars. Hi, I'm Irene. This is Inkworks, and I've got some things to say. But first, can I point out how satisfying it is to see how chunky this journal is getting? Well, it's very satisfying. And there's only January and February in there so far. It's holding up, but I do wonder if it might start coming apart by August. I guess I don't expect much for my $5, but we'll see. Returning to the Sworn Soldier series is a comfort to me. Alex Easton is such a likable character, and I always root for them to survive and solve the uncanny situations they get into. So T. Kingfisher's What Stalks the Deep was my first book for February. Instead of a European setting, this time things take place in the USA, specifically West Virginia. That's because Dr. Denton, from the first book, has asked Easton for help regarding strange goings-on at his abandoned coal mine. The time period is the 1890s, and Easton jumps on a vessel and crosses the Atlantic Ocean. Because after bonding with Denton through shared trauma in What Moves the Dead, Easton wasn't going to leave their friend in the lurch. See what I mean? Such a great character. They form a small team to investigate. It includes Easton's friend Angus and Denton's friend/lover John Ingold, a chemist. I'm not pointing out anything new by saying each of the 3 so far books was inspired by different types of horror. The first is Gothic, the second is folk, and the third, this one, is Cosmic, aka Lovecraftian. I wasn't as excited to start reading this one for a couple of reasons. One, an abandoned coal mine is one of the least interesting settings I can imagine. And 2, I'm not a big fan of H.P. Lovecraft. The thing is, I enjoyed What Stalks the Deep very much and ended up rating it on par with the others in the series. So 4 out of 5 stars. Yeah, I should have trusted Kingfisher, at least when it comes to the Sworn Soldier series, because I subsequently read one of her older books, and I have things to say about that one, but that's for later in this video. Fortunately, I had some papers and stickers to evoke the time and place of the story, at least a little bit anyway. That's thanks to the small journal say order I placed late last year. I think producer Mike is getting accustomed to me venting my book frustrations on him. He isn't safe anywhere. The kitchen while he's preparing coffee, the bathroom while he's showering, even the back deck where he thought I wouldn't look. He just can't avoid the "what was this writer thinking?" or "this character is the worst," or "well, I finished, but nothing was resolved" grumblings. I was disappointed with Play Nice. The description and the reviews I came across made it sound right up my alley. A possessed house, family secrets, creepy goings-on? How could I resist? But even from the beginning, the protagonist, Cleo, was too much for me. She was self-centered and manipulative, a real user-type personality. Now, I'm going to get a little bit spoilery. Consider yourselves as surrogate producer mics. I get that the main character didn't have a stable childhood, so I hoped she would have an arc and experience some character growth. But that didn't happen. Even after discovering the truth about her mom, her dad, her sisters, and the house, nothing seemed to change. In fact, she basically washes her hands of responsibility, has the house put up for sale, and leaves the problem for the next residents. Play Nice got 2 out of 5 stars from me. It was my first Rachel Harrison book, and it was such an aggravating experience that I've cleared her other titles from my Libby holds, because life's too short. Not much in the way of stickerage here, just the jaunty little demon on the right, but I'm still really happy with this spread. I was trying for a 1970s interior aesthetic, since the possessed house was literally a 1970s split level, not a 3-level Victorian. The cover lied. Yet another letdown. I liked The Man Who Died Twice a little more than the first book in the series, which is The Thursday Murder Club. So I gave The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman 4 out of 5 stars. All of the previous club members are back: Elizabeth, Joyce, Ron, and Ibrahim. Although Ibrahim takes a back seat for much of the story, as he's recovering from an injury. Elizabeth's past rears its head, and that sets off the main storyline. There are secret agents, stolen diamonds, mobsters, and drug dealers. Even the builder Bogdan gets to play, since the club relies on him for some of the dirtier aspects of investigation. Once again, we got Joyce's delightful journal entries. Unfortunately, Ibrahim's situation is a real bummer. He's injured and traumatized, but I'm hoping he improves for the next book. Surprisingly, there was a lot of time spent on DCI Hudson's personal life, specifically his new romantic relationship. Well, maybe not a lot of time, but more than was warranted, in my opinion. Also, is it not strange that Officer Donna DeFreitas would hang out with her mom and her boss during her off time? To be clear, it's Donna's mom that's dating DCI Hudson, not Donna herself. That would be more than strange. That would be unethical. It's sad that people were wronged. Some even lost their lives. But in the end, the bad guys get their comeuppance. Enough to mostly satisfy me, at least. The reason I did the spread this way: at one point in the story, there's a garden party at the fancy property of a criminal middleman. The event was in service of some sort of media puff piece. Of course, there were off-limits areas, such as where bodies and explosives are buried, but otherwise the thug was quite proud of his picture-perfect landscaping, thus the flowers and stone wall stickers. Okay, this book, The Hollow Places, pissed me off. Seriously, I wish I could show you a video of me ranting to producer Mike after reading the first third or so. Stupid, reckless characters. These are 30-somethings. They act like they're 15. And if Kara says, "Ugh," one more time... All of this while producer Mike sighed, clutched his pillow, and rolled over. The book improved, however, since I enjoyed the second half more than the first. If you've read Algernon Blackwood's short story, The Willows, you'd likely get more out of T. Kingfisher's The Hollow Places. The author is known for reworking elements from classic stories, as she did with What Moves the Dead, which was inspired by Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher. In my opinion, The Hollow Places doesn't work as well. And that's mostly because the two main characters are immature and do things that don't make sense. Which is too bad, because I've recently become a fan of this author. The biggest letdown was that a lot of the Kingfisher humor that I usually love felt misplaced and cringe. The climactic sequence inside the little Museum of the Strange did work for me, though. I even shed a tear or two by the end, but that's because I have a problem. 2.5 out of 5 stars. Most of the ephemera for this spread came from the Antiquarian sticker book. That volume has so many odd-looking images, but it sort of fits here. I used rubber stamps for some of the title lettering. Boy, am I glad I picked up a couple of letter sets because they've come in handy many times. A jaded reader might think there's no way this book's contents will live up to its stunning cover, but that reader would be wrong, because Bat Eater by Kylie Lee Baker is easily 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm likely underselling it. The setting is New York City during the early stage of the COVID pandemic. The main character is troubled and full of neuroses, but considering everything she's experienced, it's a wonder she isn't worse off. The horrors are multi-layered. There's the supernatural ones revolving around hungry ghosts, yes, but also real-life ones resulting from racism and misogyny. That's right, there's a serial killer, or killers, going around brutally slaying Asian women. If you can stomach some rough stuff, there's a good story here that is well written and says things that need to be said. I understand the concept of hungry ghosts is in a number of Asian cultures and religions. I once watched a horror comedy called The I-3. I think it was Thai-made. There was a scene where several young people call the spirits by tapping their rice bowls with chopsticks, which wasn't smart, since once the ghosts appear, the youths can't stop tapping or they'll get eaten. It was all quite goofy and played for laughs, but remove the comedic element and it's terrifying. This was one of those times I forgot to include the book cover in my layout, so once again it's sort of flapping in the breeze as an afterthought. You might be wondering, but Irene, where did you get all of those creepy bat stickers? A couple of sources. The Antiquarian sticker book mentioned earlier, and the Mystical Ephemera sticker book. Dune by Frank Herbert was first published in 1965, and it's highly regarded in science fiction circles. This book was also on my niece's reading list, so I suggested we try out the Buddy Read feature on Storygraph. I posted my thoughts as I read, but she did not. I get it. A job search and interviews can keep a person busy. Or maybe she was fed up with my critical attitude, thinking, I didn't sign up for an angry Buddy Read. I'm out of here. Not that I was in a rage mind, but I was disappointed in Dune, the novel. The recent film adaptation by Villeneuve was really good, and the older Lynch film has its charms. Unfortunately, parts of the novel, particularly in the middle, were tedious and a slog to get through. Perhaps it's unfair to judge on one book, but my opinion is that Herbert wasn't a great storyteller. Or maybe he needed a better editor. Or at the very least, his writing is simply not to my taste. I'm so glad for the buddy read, though, since it kept me reading when I was tempted to throw in the towel. When I was around 15, I went and saw the David Lynch film adaptation. It was 1984 and the first showing at the cinema. They made it into an event with pop-up popcorn stations at the bottom of the screen where, at one point, the manager came out to announce the movie was going to begin in 5 minutes, so you still had time to finish the book. That reminds me, Storygraph says the digital edition has 528 pages, but my device shows it has 883 pages. The appendices and afterword are less than 100 pages and wouldn't account for a 350-page discrepancy. So what gives? No, it's not the end of civilization, but how am I supposed to brag about page counts when someone can wave around the Storygraph listing going, lies, it's only 500 pages. Anyway, 3 out of 5 stars. Glad I read it, but I have no plans to read the sequels. So that was my February in books. At the time of this recording, it's now the middle of March, with a couple of more reads under my belt, including a 5-star novel. Yes! Looking forward to sharing that sometime next month. Here's to hoping producer Mike gets to sleep in peace for a while. I'm happy to share this reading journal session. Thanks for watching, liking, subscribing, commenting, and staying until the end. Until next time, remember, there are bigger crimes than poor writing, such as wearing horizontal stripes. Still, reading shouldn't be a never-ending chore, so either DNF or power through. Then make some pretty pages in a notebook. You can always complain afterward. And stay literary, my friends.